Welcome to Access Zen with Gregory Foster. Our program will help you set a more perfect balance between your inner world and the outside world. And now, here's your host, Gregory Foster.
And good morning, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of Access Zen Radio. I'm your host, Gregory Foster, and thanks again for all of your wonderful support. We couldn't do this show without you. So on today's show, we'll be getting into this in a moment, but we've got a wonderful guest by the name of Stephen Shapps. And please make sure to stay tuned all the way to the end, because we've got a surprise for you. We're going to be debuting a brand new cut from the Shakti Tribe off their Spiritual Rock CD. That's right, you heard correct. Spiritual Rock CD, Rock On Sat Nam. So stay tuned to that. And on our show, we've got Stephen Shapps. Stephen, would you, for the benefit of our wonderful listeners, give us a good encapsulation of your background, because it's so incredible, I'm not sure I could even give it justice.
Well, thank you. My background is extensive. My first interest is as an artist, and that started out as a little boy, and I grew up in a family of artists and musicians. My interest has always been in nature and the connection between beauty and nature and our surroundings. There's been an interest in healing. The art and the creative expression is a way of sharing beauty. My interests in healing has expanded with working with my own personal challenges, dealing with issues of emotional, how can I say, I'll be honest with you, emotional abuse and communication, relationships issues. My interest led me to participate and live for a while with a Native American tribe in Bishop, the Paiutes, and the family is still there. Native American cultures, I've traveled into India, Afghanistan, so on and so forth. But I think the vast interest and history came about because of my desire and want to support and offer some of the skills I had and gain new ones by becoming a therapist. And I attended USM and graduated, I think it was in 1997 from the counseling psychology program, and subsequently became a licensed therapist. And then the interest grew into many, many different aspects of treatment approaches, from EMDR to somatics, dance movement therapy, on and on. I mean, there's many of them I don't even, I tend to forget. But my interest is still in therapeutic arts and gaining and learning new strategies to offer clients wherever they are in their, so to speak, process with life, from coaching to severe issues of addiction, psychosis. I've had a very strong interest in addictions, chemical, drug addictions, as well as process addictions. And it seems from my years of training and years as a therapist, addictions seem to be the primary focus, the urge to satisfy our desires and wants through the objects of the world. Whether it be through pornography, drugs, whether it's accomplishment or gaining, collecting, or making lots of money. Those are forms of satisfying our desires and wants. So my interest in the Vedanta Advaita, which is I think a 5,000 or 6,000 year old, it's an inquiry. Let me just be precise about this. It's not a religion, nor is it a belief system. It's a means of inquiry and learning the knowledge of reality. And it's a system to determine how our values and beliefs operate in the world. So it's not a religion. And so that's
beautiful. Love it.
And so that's what makes it so interesting, and it's been around for thousands of years, and it addresses what is real and what is not real, and the elimination of suffering and liberation through various means. And it talks about the world of reality and the world of subjective meaning. And a good example of this would be, and I tell this story to my clients, is a man and his son walking in the desert, and they happen to run out of water. And the son says to the father, "Water, water, it's water." And the father says, "No, son, that's a mirage." Mm-hmm. And the son says, it's water, it's not a mirage. I see it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to quench my thirst. And no matter how much the father tries to influence the son and tells him it's a mirage, he doesn't believe him. He believes the object of his desire will satisfy his quench. But he's all excited. I'm going to get the water. Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to get it. And he goes out. There's no water. Comes back and says to his father, "Why didn't you tell me there was no water?" And the father said, "I did, but you refused to listen to me." So, this is an example of how we see things and we believe our beliefs are true when in fact it's totally something different.
That's fascinating. And what I really hear you saying is you're really helping us work with our illusions / desires to get to our true inner self.
Yes. They are illusions. They exist because we experience them, but they're unreal because they come and go. And my definition of reality is that things that are real don't change.
Well, that's great. Fascinating. Things that are real don't change. And everything in our lives change every day, so it can't be real.
But we experience them. We have to
experience them.
We do experience them, so they exist in our experience. But even experiences come and go. So how do you know which one's real? I work with a lot of people in the entertainment business and in show business. And there's a couple in particular. They used to be very successful in screenwriting, and much of their scripts and screenplays were sold. And they were riding an exceptionally wonderful high with money coming in and having cars and property and everything else. And then with the nature of the recession and people's spending dropping, subsequently scripts were not bought, and they had to take a look at their life in another way. And so their idea and identity about who they were, their success, their skills, and their abilities came into question. And in this particular case, we worked on what was important in terms of what made him happy. What was his driving purpose in life? And we began to explore the nature of the things that he felt would give him security, control, and approval in the world. And obviously, the things of the world are impermanent. They come and go. And we would like to think that we control them, or at least the very least that we have an influence on them. Because in our mind's eye, if we don't have them, they may mean, well, I'm not going to have a job, I'm not going to have the house, the car, my wife or family are not going to be treated in all the ways that I like to treat them. So we looked at something deeper. We began to look at the relationship between how we imbue the objects in the world, that is the physical things in the world and the people, with our desires and wants. In other words, we desire things and want them, and we believe they will give us happiness. And when we get them, we do experience happiness. But as all of us begins to look in our experience, we see more often than not, happiness doesn't last very long because there's something else there that we want to go after. Which is a very interesting discovery when we look. And this is tied to suffering and pain and expectation. So one day we're up, the next day we're down. One moment we're happy, the next day we're not. Who are we? Are we the same person? Are we the person that is happy one minute and sad the next? And our identity says, we have identities and beliefs that are attached to acquiring and having things. Often the view is if we don't have those things, that must mean I'm less than, or I'm no good, or there may be something wrong with me. Which leads to other issues like self-esteem and doubt and self-judgment. which affects the whole energy of the body. In other words, when we have a belief that we are less than and we have a problem because we don't have the things that we believe everybody else has, it affects our attitude, our health, the way we act in life. And on the far extreme, with depression and severe anxiety and severe psychological issues, often requires not only therapy and medication, but it affects everything. So it's interesting in this particular case how this individual and myself, we work through what are the things that really make him happy, that support him all the time. One of which was swimming, another thing was writing. And because my background is in the arts, I understand the process of creativity, how good it feels in the soul when we're creating something, we're not stuck in our thoughts. We feel very good about ourselves. We're connected to that part of ourself that sees ourself in the world as beautiful. I mean, there's nothing that gets in the way when we're in the midst of our creative process. But everybody has a degree of that along the spectrum. And so when we spoke about specifically his writing, I said, what's it like when you're writing? He said, well, I'm into my writing and nothing else bothers me. Nothing. None of the problems I had before I started writing, or none of the issues that I may have to deal with when I finish, such as having a screenplay purchased. So we focused on this sense of self, this sense of well-being. And I said, where does that come from? How do you acquire that? And he began to wonder. Well, he believed it was about the writing. And I asked him, well, so when you stop writing, is that sense of well-being still there? Or is it just about doing certain things? It is about acquiring things. Is it just about when you're writing? And he pondered for a minute and said, I really don't know. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, what if that feeling of well-being is always there? It's never not there. Wow. And in that moment, he said, that's a very good question. And I asked him another question, and I asked him, you have these feelings and thoughts that come up about the world of objects, about the world of people and things. And when you don't get them or they don't go the way you would like them to, there's an upset. There's a feeling of insecurity. There's a question of, well, what do I do now? And often an existential feeling of anxiety and perhaps doom he related to. And we began to explore that a little bit. And I said, well, are you your feelings and thoughts, pictures and sounds, or are you that which is aware of them? I said, are you that which is aware of the feelings and sounds and the pictures that arise in consciousness, arise in your awareness? And there was a pause. And he said, I am that which is aware of those things. Hmm. And he suddenly made a distinction. He began to see that who he was the sense of well-being, the sense of infinite bliss, so to speak, and that when the thoughts and feelings and the sounds and his beliefs about the world came up, he noticed that he began to identify with them, and there was a set of behaviors, a set of memories attached to them that he was conditioned by the past to act on. And we explored that. So I said, well, when you're aware, when you're in the presence of this awareness, how do you feel? I mean, what's going on? And he said, I'm at perfect peace. And I asked him again, now what happens again when these thoughts arise? Well, I believe they're real. I believe there's something that's real that I need to act on, And I said, why? And he said, well, because I have feelings inside of me. I have these sensations, this energy, and I believe they mean something. I have to act on them. I said, well, what is that? And he said, I really don't know. And I inquired a little bit deeper, and I said, are they the conditioned behaviors, the learned responses that came from the past, from the people you grew up with, from the world, the beliefs, and the conditionings? He said, I never thought of it that way. I said, well, look to see what the tendencies are when you're afraid, for instance. What do you tend to do? What do you tend to think about yourself? And he says, I take it personally. I think there's something wrong with me. I believe I need to fix it or change it. I need to go out into the world and do something to make it go away. And I said, well, how do you feel right now as I'm talking to you, as we're exploring these tendencies? He said that my mind is beginning to quiet. I said, well, that's very interesting that your mind is beginning to quiet as we're exploring the very nature of your experience, that is, that part of you that's aware, and what arises in awareness, the thoughts, the feelings, the sounds, the pictures in mind that you have about yourself and the world. And all of a sudden he became even more quiet, as if his awareness amplified. I said, well, when you're in this awareness, what is your experience? He said, I feel perfectly at peace. And I said to him, so who you are is that which is perfectly at peace. And that could you allow these thoughts, feelings, and pictures and sounds that come up in your awareness to go? Could you let them go? And he was a little perplexed by that for a moment. And he said, well, how do you do that? I said, just by letting them go. And, that set his mind into thinking. Well, how do you do that? What's that all about? And I said, well, just welcome the thought that you want to know how. Give it some attention. Whatever arises in your experience, welcome it. And what I mean by welcome is just notice what's there. Like with a glad heart. I have a question that I want to know how. Or a statement that I don't really know. And that seemed to lift and loosen this question. And we spoke about surrender, because this is really what we're really alluding to, is the sense of letting go. And part of letting go is, it's kind of it's like being in a paradox often. We want to let go, but we don't know how to let go, or we feel stuck. And we think there's something wrong about being stuck, or we think there's something wrong about not knowing how to do something, which kind of feeds our ego a little bit, because like everyone else and myself, it doesn't feel good often to not know. I mean, there's a part of me, and I'm just speaking for myself, that would like to have people believe that I know what I'm talking about. But the truth is I don't always know. And oftentimes, it takes some humbleness and some humility to say, I really don't have the answer.
That's great. That's beautiful wisdom.
And it's okay not to know. It's only a belief. It's only a thought that runs us, that we've come to believe that we should know all the answers. And as we spoke about this, something relaxed a little bit and he let go. And it wasn't a question of how to. It was a question of just allowing things to be as they are. Even the thought that one doesn't know how. And we spoke about judgment, and we spoke about doubt. And oftentimes, doubt gets in the way. There's nothing wrong with doubt in of itself, but it's what we do with it, or like judgment. And my notion is there's nothing wrong with judgment because it is there, unless we believe there's something wrong with it. So part of my work with clients is to kind of create a space with them, create a context with them where they begin to feel it's okay to experience whatever is there. Most of the time, we don't do that. We make things wrong. We make our feelings wrong, as the case with anger. And of itself, anger, there's nothing wrong with anger. It's what we think about it and what we do with it and how we use it that's more of a problem than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit about a client. I could say that this was very helpful for him. He began to teach, and he's very much into teaching and has made a transition into something else he has discovered that he loves just as much as selling his scripts.
Mm. Wow. That's pretty profound, Stephen.
Yeah, it is. It's a very profound thing. He was open to another possibility that was already within him.
You know, I can tell just by talking to you, I feel this sense of peace and tranquility. You really have an incredible way about you, Stephen. I'm sure you've been told that before.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to say something, and you already have that peace. You
Yes.
recognize something that's within you.
Yes.
So, and not to say I appreciate that, but most importantly, it's a reflection of what's already inside you, and I think that's what's important. So forgive me.
No, you're doing a beautiful job of drawing that peace within me. That's a very good distinction. And for our listeners out there, what basically Stephen is saying is that the essence of who we are is different from the ego, the thoughts, and the feelings that we have every day as we travel to work and answer our emails and our telephones. We've talked about this on other shows. And it's just really amazing when you get to that place inside where it's still, right? You talk a lot about stillness in some of your Facebook work and some of the things that I see that you do, Stephen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Stephen, we're going to go on a short break, and when we come back, we're going to continue this fascinating discussion. I know you do a lot of work with addictions, and I want to get into that. I also want to talk about the anger component.
Absolutely.
I'm Gregory Foster, and you're listening to Access Zen.
And now, let's return to Access Zen.
And we're back. We're all listening to Stephen Schaps, special therapist here in Southern California. And Stephen, you're based here in the LA area. Is that correct?
Yes, here and in Washington and Oregon as well.
Oh, wonderful. I'm originally from Seattle, so...
Oh, well, we're Northwest people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm licensed in Washington State as a marriage and family therapist as well.
Nice. And my mom is, too, so she'll love to hear that.
Yeah, and so the Northwest is a very, very, very special place to me. And
It is.
yeah, it would be my goal to return to the Portland, Vancouver area. And,
Well, check this out. My wife and I went up there about 2 weeks ago. You know, everyone's always talking about the weather up there, right?
Yes.
Had 10 consecutive 80-plus days and not a drop of rain. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's because I left.
Same here. Same here.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe that says something a little bit about what's going on around the world with weather and climate. There's changes. There's something going on.
Something going on always.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a changing world. I know that you went to the University of Santa Monica in 97. I graduated there in 2008. And on the break, we were kind of talking about, the progression in life. So what led you to the University of Santa Monica? Because I know you've obviously expanded your box considerably since leaving, and I'm in the same process of expansion. So
Yeah.
walk me through that. What got you to USM? In the
Well, that's really a great question. I was living in Portland at the time, and a good friend of mine who started a program at Portland State University in counseling, and that inspired me to do the same thing. We were great friends. We'd been involved in some spiritual things, and I applied to Portland University, and they were closing their counseling program down. And I had gotten I'm a minister in MSIA, which is a group affiliated with USM, and at the time I received a magazine that the university had a program in counseling psychology. And at the same time, there was some illness in the family. We believe my father had prostate cancer. Both my mother and father were living in Los Angeles. And I thought, let me apply to this university. I'm familiar with Southern California, and they have powerful schools, and this sounds like a really powerful place to do some spiritual work and also be in that energy of healing. and while I visited my parents, while I visited my father. So it became kind of a multi-level thing. That's how I came to USM. It became kind of the wise choice if I was going to do this program, as well as be close to my family during this very challenging time of illness.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And
So just for our listeners, and you've all heard me talk about the University of Santa Monica. It's a wonderful university based in Santa Monica, California. It's a 2-year program. They also have some other programs available. Really, the concept behind it is, you've done your work, you've done some work on yourself, you've gotten your education. Now let's do some really deeper work and advance ourselves into the study of awareness and who we really are, right?
Yeah, that's the general approach. I came to this school with many years of other things prior to that. And so my interest in Zen Buddhism was there for many, many years. The Vipassana, yoga, since the early 20s.
A very diverse background. I love that.
Yeah, and then before that. So this was not foreign by any means. It was a means to an end, as well as a learning and also a personal healing. And also one goal was, and this kind of fit the bit about counseling, is one cannot go any deeper with a client unless one has gone to the depths of their own healing. And so this was the school at the time that they were offering this program, in my opinion, would offer a program that would allow me to work with myself in depth. And it proved to be the correct course for me to take. Now, they don't offer that program anymore, unfortunately. But it's many things to many people. It's from career transition to healing issues of relationship to communication, mentally challenged issues, just a general interest in spirit, becoming part of a community. I mean, there's many, many reasons.
Yes, absolutely. And I know you do a lot of work with anger, and
Yeah.
I want to ask you a key question. Do you think there's a connection between anger and addiction?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How would that relate? So if I'm a
good.
listener and I'm driving, give me the correlation. Because you rattle off in the beginning of the show a number of different types of addictions. People typically think drugs, but there's others, right?
Right, yeah, there is. There's many. It's called process addictions, and that could be being obsessively clean. to having the best and the finest of clothes, to having the most, the best cars, pornography, being the most successful, being the most smart, intelligent, having the right answers, being the best at one does, often translates into I will be happy if I have all of those things, or I do all of those things. And if I don't, I will be unhappy. But we're talking about beliefs without even getting that object. So if desire means I will be fulfilled if I get that object, that means we would think that the first time we acquire an object, we would be completely fulfilled. But that's not the case, because it wears off. We want more of the same thing, and often we want more and more of it to fulfill or satisfy the belief or desire, or the want, which infers lack. And it's just like a drug. The individual who uses, let's say, even coffee, a simple thing as caffeine, believes that'll hype them up, get them going, right?
Yes.
And so we'll get through the day. Well, why do we want to get through the day? Why can't we do it naturally without coffee? Well, because we've been accustomed to the feeling of getting things done and efforting and going about our day quickly to get it all done, because there's a perception that if we don't, we may be bad, we're not going to accomplish the things we want, we will judge ourselves, there may be doubt, so on and so forth, and there may be something wrong with us. We won't get our job done at work if we don't get it done quickly. There's a lot of perception there. There's a lot of beliefs.
So I get the idea of addictions now.
Yes.
How do you think that ties back to anger? Do you think there's a correlation? Give me that sense of that.
Yeah. If I don't get what I want, I'm disappointed. If I don't get people to behave the way I want, I'll be disappointed. It drives the feeling that may arise as anger.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. In other words, anger is a feeling, okay, that arises in awareness. And then we label it. We label it this way often. We blame or give meaning to the objects of the world for not behaving or acting in the ways we want. That's on the objective realm. Okay?
So you feel like if somebody, let's say that they've got an alcohol problem and they're drinking themselves to death and they can't seem to get themselves out of that cycle, out of that circle.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's some self-judgment, some self-hatred going on there?
Absolutely. But the bottom line is they're seeking relief. The underlying intention is to make themselves happy.
Wow. The underlying intention is to make themselves happy.
They can't help it. They can't help it. In other words, their desire and want, their underlying desire and want is I want to be happy, peaceful, and be okay with me. And their conditioned belief is that if I do this drug over and over again, I'll be happy. It'll satisfy some urge. I'll be able to be free and be liberated.
Wow.
And this is the way I look at clients, is that their underlying motive is that just body wants to heal. I want to be happy. So they can't help it. This is, an addiction is an addiction. And along with it, there's an issue of esteem, a belief I'm no good, there must be something wrong with me. These are all tendencies in mind. And as long as one believes the thoughts that they have, it becomes a self-perpetuating fantasy.
So give me some examples you gave a beautiful example to start the show off. How would you work with someone that was in this pattern, let's say, for example?
Well, okay, I have a couple of clients who have been heroin addicts. And when things don't go the way they like in the world, in other words, they didn't get the job, their husband or wife didn't talk to them the right way, all of a sudden something inside of them is triggered, a feeling. And along with that feeling ensues a belief. There must be something wrong. That person is to blame. Here's this urge. I need to medicate, soothe, find a way to get rid of this feeling. Rather than looking at and inquiring to the nature of the feeling.
The nature of the feeling.
Yes. Now this is a very powerful thing. Feelings are just feelings. Thoughts are just thoughts. They just arise in awareness. But what we tend to do is think they're real. Mm-hmm. We think we need to do something with our thoughts.
So let's take someone like an Amy Winehouse. Are you familiar with that?
I'm a little bit familiar with her. Not everything. I'm familiar that she had some challenges. Yeah, alcohol, I think, was one. And she was an incredible artist.
Yeah, she had this incredible classic R&B, soul, and jazz. We play lots of different music on this show. We have musical shows all the time. So I'm always fascinated when I see someone like a Kurt Cobain. Again, 27 seems to be the magic number. She was 27. A lot of famous people have crossed over at that particular age.
That's right. Many. Yeah. Uh-huh.
If you were working with an Amy Winehouse, what process, because she obviously worked with everybody and no one could help herself to get to where she wanted. What approach would you take with someone that was maybe on that course?
Well, okay, I don't know Amy specifically, but I have a great amount of insight in creative people.
Mm-hmm.
As an artist, as a writer, as a photographer, the process of creativity is magical.
Yes,
and
sure is.
Oftentimes we can't turn it on or off when we want. But if we're depending upon our creativity to make money and to please the audience, oftentimes
a conflict.
Often one times finds they have to keep turning it on and turning it on and turning it on to get the same effect. Or be spontaneous and creative. If one is doing it over and over and over again every night and has to produce, the pressure has to be extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to use chemical to help, And then, of course, our peer pressure, and then what's accepted and what's done in the entertainment business is a whole other influence.
So how would you work with someone who was in that patterning?
Very interesting question. Obviously, I'd want to get to know their history and get a sense of what they love and what they enjoy in the world, and how they view themselves, what their self-concept is, and what the pressures are.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably normalize their use of any drug. And what I mean by that is inquire into what their desires and wants are, and if they're getting them, and why not. And I have many processes for looking at what our now feelings and thoughts are, and exploring the nature of our dispositions, such as our tendencies to go out and seek, to go out and fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
And these are tendencies in mind until we take action.
So let me ask you this, because this is kind of where I'm going. You did an incredible job at the beginning talking about the writer who had some challenges, and you were able to get him to get to that place of awareness and peace.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
How do you do the same thing with someone who is a physical addiction, and then the drivers that we just talked about, say like with an Amy, to get them to go, the drug, as it were, that feeling that drug takes them to, how to replace that and just go to that peaceful feeling?
We may never get rid of the feeling. Okay, that urge or that feeling, that disposition may be there forever. But that's not bad or good. That just becomes a message in awareness that offers the individual who has been given and who is committed to a set of strategies to use in the moment. And that's no different than if I'm in the midst of judging myself. If I have a strategy to see it, to recognize it, I might be more inclined to have a different relationship to it. But all of us have feelings that come up in the body all the time. And we believe they're real, and we believe we should do something about it, and we have a belief about it. And more times than not, it doesn't fix it. It keeps coming up.
So your approach from a somatic perspective, and please share with our listeners what that is and how that would apply here. The mind, body, soul approach, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I look at somebody holistically, what they say, what they don't say, their heartbeat, the reflection of their body. Oftentimes, even the nature of breath has very much to do with how one thinks and their unconscious dispositions. And so in working with an individual or a group of individuals, we make aware of sensations in the body as a way of increasing awareness, increasing attention to what's there, and associating that with perhaps letting go, noticing, giving what is called undivided attention, and that's without doubt, without judgment, or limiting interpretation, and often learning to allow the feeling to just come up and be gone, as opposed to exploring what it could be, what the source of, looking at the history, going into someone's past or family history. And this turns out to be a very successful, quick way of recognizing in the moment something is going on and learning some techniques and skills just to let it go. Yeah.
This is really good stuff. So sticking with the theme of addictions, can you give our listeners some examples of success where you've applied these techniques to someone who had a substance abuse or alcohol and there was success using these techniques?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to one that's very potent, and that was an individual who had a heroin addiction. Yep. And that individual came in, and the first thing they shared was, I had a terrible week. All of a sudden, all the urges and the tendency to use was there. My husband wasn't treating me. And so what we did was we sat down, and I asked her some simple questions about what her experience was right now. And could she welcome the feelings, the thoughts? Could she welcome them? And her first answer was, no, I can't. They're too intense. And I asked her, well, would you be willing just to welcome the fact that they were too intense? And she says, what do you mean? I don't know. I said, could you welcome the fact that you don't know? Make okay whatever comes up in awareness. And so what happened is awareness became predominant, and the feelings and thoughts seemed to dissipate and dissolve. And it was a matter of awareness being more present than being at the effect of the feelings and the urges. And we continue to look at this. And we continue to look at the tendencies. And the tendencies, a good word from the Vedas is vasanas. These are unconscious tendencies to take some action or to do something to ameliorate the urge to take the drug or to attack or to get angry. The belief is that it is outside of us doing it to us. This is what is called a projection. We have a belief that that thing or that person did something to us. And so when we take an action, like trying to, for instance, with anger, if we use anger as a tool to get back at them, we're really not helping ourselves very much, because we have to hold on to anger and the tool to hurt the other individual. But in the case of an urge that's very, very intense and the need to soothe it, one has to continually learn to recognize what's there. This is what's there. Yes, the urge is there. This feeling is there. Absolutely. And yes, I have these tendencies. Absolutely. Could I welcome the tendencies? Could I just notice them? Becomes the means of developing the skill over time. It doesn't happen overnight, obviously, because they're not used to doing that. They're used to judging it, making themselves wrong, thinking there's something wrong and they have to do something. And then they take the action more times than not. That's not a good one. That's not a healthy one. So we explore all those things. And the moment an individual begins to use that awareness, say, yes, that's what's there. Yes, that's what's there right now. This urge. It creates a nanosecond of time. And then over time, it creates more space so that one could begin to see, well, if I do that, there's consequences. And each time this is done, it develops a little bit more self-esteem and awareness that they are not the urges, that they are that limitless awareness, that peace already inside them that they mistakenly thought was outside of them. Outside of themselves in the object, or in this case, the drug.
Wow. So now, in the example that you're giving, did you have success with that person? Were they able to beat it?
Yes, absolutely that day.
Wow.
And so it becomes the practice to do that on a regular basis over and over again until it becomes a very natural part of one's daily skills, daily way of living.
Being able to access that inner peace when you feel like you want to go get a hit on something, right? Is that kind of it? So what I've noticed from people who have addictions is they're feeling really stressed out. You mentioned, rock stars, Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain, lots of outside pressures. And they just can't get that peace. So they use that drug to kind of take them to that place where they feel that tranquility, and yet that very thing that they're doing is destructive to their body, right?
Yes, more than destructive.
And yet
Go ahead.
When we first started this show, you took me through a process with the screenwrite, and you had them walk to this place of finding this place of peace and awareness on the inside. Right. And as you were doing that, I felt that peace myself. And I was imagining that if I was someone who was on an addiction, that if I could get to that feeling that I felt in that moment, and I'm sure the screenwrite, using your techniques and your process, your beautiful process, that could almost be a replacement for the drug in some ways, right?
Well, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with this.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, after all, if the disposition and our conditioned behavior is producing consequences to our health, would it make sense to do something that's healthy?
To go deeper, right?
And to go deeper. But if something is already there within us, it's already naturally part of us, it's never been not there, then the work is to associate and develop that skill. Many people don't want to do that.
Right. It's a choice, right?
You're right. And so the choice is to believe that the world of objects and people will continue to satisfy you, never realizing or seeing that they're only temporary. They're only experiences that come and go. And the more you do it, the more you need to have it done in order to be satisfied in the same way that you started when you started that habit. Where others are suffering or are in pain or have been on this road of exploration, seeking some liberation, are willing to look at themselves honestly through inquiry and exploring knowledge. Not everybody's willing to do that.
Wow. Well, this has just been an incredibly enlightening episode, Stephen. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has really been great stuff.
Thank you. Anytime.
Yeah. How do we reach you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. My phone number is 310-666-8807. I'm in Sherman Oaks, California. My website is Stephen Shapps, MFT. That's MMaryFrankTom.com. And you can Google me, obviously, Stephen Shapps. And my email is StephenShappsMFT@hotmail.com.
And let's not forget about Facebook. How do we find you on Facebook?
Facebook, there's several pages, Stephen Shapps, and then there's another one, My Wisdom Pages by Stephen Shapps. The other one, My Wisdom Pages, is a like page, and so there's other things there with photography and pictures.
Well, I would encourage the listeners to go out and check that out, and you've given us some really, really beautiful wisdom. Thank you so much. Have yourself a beautiful week.
Thank you so much.